You ever show up to the airport for a long cross country without any planning or preparation prior to leaving? Well, I certainly hope so, and you really shouldn't. My name's Jonathan Nagel. I've personally logged in excess of 230 flight hours, relatively young in my flying career, but of those 230 plus hours, over 140 hours have been logged as cross country, with my longest flights already being over 800 nautical miles. And that's in one direction, not round trip. So, relatively early in my career, I've taken on some pretty daunting tasks. The following video, I'm going to try to discuss several tips and steps that I personally use that hopefully will help you to fly safely, confidently, and in comfort on your long cross-country trips. For me, proper cross-country flight starts with planning, often days ahead, especially on the long trips. Where am I going? What's the purpose of the flight? It always has to be taken into consideration. Is it simply a training exercise that can be altered, completing a flight requirement like a 250 nautical mile leg for our commercial training? Am I planning on doing something at the destination? Am I going to grab a bite to eat, some lunch? Do I have an appointment to attend to? Um, Also, something that's important to look at is the flight attainable in your aircraft? Um, will you be able to complete the flight in one trip, or are you going to need to stop for fuel along the way, or possibly refuel before you return? Is the terrain limiting the possibility for you to even complete the flight? The aircraft that I fly, um, depending on weather and altitude, I certainly may not consider taking them over the mountains. Everything that I fly is non-turbo uh, and non-pressurized, so just for a matter of comfort and safety, some of the higher elevations, it wouldn't be wise to make the trip, and those are things that you also need to take into consideration prior to making the flight. Is the weather forecast good for the flight? Starting days ahead, I start watching the local weather, uh, both on the news and looking at weather prognostic charts days ahead to see, is the weather even going to hold? Is the flight something that I'm going to be able to make, or does it need to be planned for a different day? Um, as the flight gets a little bit closer, I start using 1-800-weatherbrief.com. If you do prefer to speak to someone live, you can go ahead and dial that number, 1-800-WX-BRIEF, and speak to an individual and get the full layout for your flight. Is the departure and arrival airport ready for you? Check all the NOTAMs. Make sure that the airport's even open. I've seen people and heard stories of planning to go to an airport for something only to find out that their airport is shut down for runway maintenance. It's an unfortunate thing to get all the way to where you plan on going and find out you can't even put the wheels on the ground. At your arrival airport, I've taken several trips with my flight instructors where we fly into an airport and with the intentions on stopping for an hour, going and getting some lunch and coming back. Obviously, you're not taking the plane down the interstate, so you need a vehicle. And a lot of these small airports, small FBOs that we fly into have courtesy vehicles. So is the courtesy vehicle something that you can reserve for a time slot ahead of time, or are you crossing your fingers just hoping that it's going to be there? Or do they have one at all? I've gone so far as to call to airports that don't list a courtesy vehicle, and the airport manager has told me flat out that they would be more than willing to allow me to borrow their own personal vehicle as long as I put a little bit of fuel on before I left to fly back. It's pretty amazing what the aviation community will do for you if you just ask prior to making that flight. Now, looking at a couple of days out with everything kind of set, are you physically and mentally ready to take the flight? I know the first time I took a flight more than 150, 200 miles away from my home airport, I was a little nervous. I spent some time talking to a few individuals close to me that have taken some longer flights, as well as my flight instructor, to kind of help me prepare for it. Now, your preparation the day before and the day of should always, first and foremost, the weather. Have any of the conditions changed? Again, check your tools that are available, your 1-800 weather brief, your METARs for the airports, not only at your departure and arrival destinations, but also check a few in between, especially for those longer flights. Myself, the longest flight I've taken, depicted here on my iPad, I've gone from Minneapolis area all the way down to Auburn, over 800 miles in one single leg. And there's a lot of space in between there for the weather to change. And I've seen it happen on these long flights where I've left and it's bright and sunny in Minneapolis, and the forecast is bright and sunny here in Alabama, but there's some rain or some weather happening around the St. Louis area. So it would be wise to go ahead and check areas in between and make sure that the weather is going to be acceptable for your flight. Now, it's also important along the way to check, is your aircraft ready for flight? If you're renting an aircraft, there's always potential for unexpected downtime. Just a few weeks ago, I had a flight scheduled where I was taking a longer cross country for my training, and I showed up to the airport to find out that it was down for maintenance, unexpected maintenance. It does happen. In that case, I was fortunate. There was an alternate aircraft that was not reserved that was available for me. So now that you got everything set and you're ready for the flight, there's things that can definitely help you significantly during the flight. Tools that can make the flight safer and more comfortable as well is your electronic devices. I showed earlier here my iPad sits on a nice knee board compact. I utilize ForeFlight. I also utilize Garmin Pilot and keep my POH digital on my iPad. So if I do have any questions while I'm in flight, any sort of performance numbers or anything like that, it's right there and it's handy and it's ready for me to access. One of the other things that I've recently received that I absolutely love is this little guy. It's a ADS-B receiver, GDL52. They are spendy little devices, but what you get back out of them, I personally believe, is priceless. The ability to receive traffic information as well as weather while you're in flight is invaluable. And there's been many times where I've been flying along and you see somebody on the scope when you're in the middle of nowhere and you're looking around and you can't quite see them, but you know the direction that they're in. Just aids you with your additional situational awareness. You should also always have safety measure items, a bail kit, if you will, when you're taking the longer flights. A change clothes, warm clothes, particularly this time of year. If something does happen, in the event that you do have to make a forced landing, you want to make sure that you have warm clothes along with. And I always do a change of clothes along with me as well on the longer flights, because you could make it to your destination but not be able to leave. I personally haven't had that happen to me yet, but I've again heard stories of people flying into a place just during training and have unexpected weather roll back in at the home base that you expected to be able to turn around and fly back to, and then they were stuck. One time I did hear of a student that was stuck overnight and had to sit with the aircraft overnight, and it'd be kind of nice to be able to put on some clean socks before you take that flight again. Other things that you should always have along with you anyways, first aid kit, water, some snacks, something to kind of just make the flight a little bit more comfortable. Other items that really help with that, that I think are often overlooked, a good pair of comfortable sunglasses. When you're up there flying for several hours at a time, you want to do everything you possibly can to help with fatigue. And one of those things that you can do is wear a good pair of sunglasses. Invest in your eyes, protect them, and it's just a good idea. Get yourself a good set of non-polarized sunglasses to aid with that comfort, as well as a good set of noise-canceling headset. Now, I myself purchased the Bose. Absolutely love them, highly recommend them. But there's plenty of other headsets out there that I've heard good things about that are much more affordable, and but highly recommend. Again, just like you invest in your eyes, invest in your ears, protect them. The old headsets that are non-noise canceling, albeit they do work, I've used them for longer flights, and you can definitely tell the difference. So, in conclusion here, when the proper steps are taken and you do your planning and you do everything that is necessary to prepare for a long flight, long cross-country flights can be safe, fun, and incredibly rewarding. Opens up a whole new list of opportunities, possibilities for you. Being able to fly hundreds of miles away in a matter of just a couple hours, do something and turn it around and return in the same couple hours in one day is an awesome experience, and can be safely done and comfortably done as long as you make the right steps. I hope this helps.